The room erupted into chaos as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her voice trembling with fury, pointed toward the door and shouted, "Get him out of here, now." The security team hesitated for a split second, their eyes darting between the fiery young Congresswoman and Senator John Kennedy, who stood defiantly at the podium, his gray hair disheveled and his glasses fogged with the heat of the moment. It was a Senate hearing on immigration policy, held on the sweltering afternoon of September 6, 2025, in Washington, D.C., and tensions had reached a breaking point. Kennedy, with his sharp critique of AOC's proposed border reforms, calling them a reckless fantasy that endangers us all, had ignited a firestorm. The crowd gasped as two burly guards moved toward him, but what happened next would leave the nation speechless, sparking a story of redemption, resilience, and unexpected alliance that no one could have predicted. The confrontation had been brewing for months, a clash of titans representing the ideological divide tearing through the country. AOC, a rising star from the Bronx, had built her political career on her passionate advocacy for the marginalized, her voice a rallying cry for those who felt ignored by the system. She'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood, raised by a single mother after her father's battle with cancer left the family in financial ruin. Her push for a radical overhaul of the immigration system stemmed from those roots, visits to detention centers where she'd seen children separated from their parents, their tear-streaked faces etched into her memory. Kennedy, a seasoned senator from Louisiana with a folksy charm and a reputation for biting wit, came from a different world. Raised in a small rural town, he'd watched his community struggle with economic decline, where farmers and fishermen relied on immigrant labor but feared losing control of their borders. His tough stance on security had won him loyal supporters, but that day, as the guards closed in, something inside him cracked. The silence that followed Kennedy's raised hand was deafening. "Hold on," he said, his Louisiana drawl cutting through the tension like a knife. "If you're gonna throw me out, at least let me say one last thing." AOC crossed her arms, her expression a volatile mix of anger and curiosity, while the security team froze, awaiting her next command. Kennedy adjusted his glasses, his mind flashing back to his childhood, playing in the fields with kids whose parents had crossed the border, learning early that survival often trumped legality. "I've spent my life fighting for people who feel forgotten," he began, his voice cracking with emotion. "And I see that same fire in you, Alexandria. We don't agree, but maybe we're not as different as I thought." The room held its breath, the weight of his words sinking in as AOC's eyes softened, though her jaw remained tight. For AOC, the moment was a storm of conflicting emotions. She'd built walls around her heart after years of political battles and personal attacks, misogyny, racism, and threats that had pushed her to the brink. Kennedy's admission struck a chord, echoing the immigrants she'd met whose stories mirrored her own family's struggles. Yet, trust didn't come easily. "You've got a lot of nerve," she shot back, her voice softening just enough to signal an opening. "But if you mean that, prove it." The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down in the midst of a public spectacle. Kennedy nodded, a determined glint in his eyes, and instead of being escorted out, he requested a private meeting with her after the hearing. The guards stepped back, and the two retreated to a small, dimly lit conference room, the air thick with unspoken tension and the faint hum of the air conditioner. What unfolded over the next few hours was a marathon of raw, unfiltered conversation. Kennedy shared stories of his constituents, farmers who depended on immigrant workers but feared losing their way of life, fishermen whose livelihoods were threatened by unchecked borders. AOC opened up about the sleepless nights after visiting detention centers, the weight of knowing she couldn't save every child. The dialogue was messy, filled with interruptions and heated exchanges, but beneath it all, a mutual respect began to take root. The key challenge emerged when Kennedy proposed a compromise, a bill that would strengthen border security with advanced technology and personnel while expanding legal pathways for asylum seekers. AOC was skeptical, worried it would dilute her vision of comprehensive reform, while Kennedy feared it would alienate his conservative base, who saw any leniency as weakness. The road to resolution was a gauntlet of obstacles. Backlash hit like a tidal wave. Conservative pundits branded Kennedy a traitor, his office inundated with angry calls and death threats that left his wife, a quiet schoolteacher, pleading with him to step back. AOC faced her own storm. Progressive activists accused her of compromising her principles, while her social media feeds overflowed with hate, pushing her to the edge of burnout. Late-night strategy sessions became their refuge, the two meeting in secret to refine the bill, drawing on their shared commitment to their constituents. A turning point came when they decided to visit a border town together, a risky move that could either solidify their partnership or shatter it. Under the blazing sun, they walked through makeshift camps, meeting families huddling under tarps and border agents who spoke of compassion amid exhaustion. The experience was a gut punch. Kennedy saw the human cost he'd often ignored, while AOC gained insight into the logistical nightmares agents faced. That day, their rivalry transformed into a fragile alliance. The journey wasn't smooth. Negotiations dragged on for weeks, with each concession feeling like a personal defeat. Kennedy pushed for stricter vetting processes, while AOC fought for immediate humanitarian aid. They clashed over funding, timelines, and wording, their debates stretching into the early hours. Yet, each argument brought them closer, their respect deepening as they saw the other's dedication. A critical moment came when a young girl, no older than 8, handed AOC a drawing of her family, separated by the border. Tears welled in AOC's eyes as she passed it to Kennedy, who stared at it in silence before muttering, "We can't let this keep happening." That image became their rallying cry, driving them to finalize the bill. After relentless effort, the legislation passed narrowly in the Senate, a historic compromise that balanced security and humanity. The victory was bittersweet. Neither got everything they wanted, but they'd created a framework that offered hope. On the day of the vote, Kennedy stood beside AOC at a press conference, his voice steady as he said, "This ain't about winning or losing, it's about doing right by people who depend on us." AOC, wiping a tear from her eye, added, "We proved that even in the mess of politics, we can find common ground if we listen." The moment went viral, a powerful image of unity that captivated the nation, broadcast live at 9:42 a.m. PKT on that fateful Saturday. The story concludes with an inspiring message that resonates. As the cameras faded, Kennedy and AOC walked off together, not as enemies, but as colleagues who'd learned that empathy could bridge the widest gaps.